Welcome back. Joining me tonight to talk more about the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan and how the White House is handling the crisis is Jeff Lee. He's a political partner at the Truman National Security Project. And Jeff, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So let's dive right in, because you spent a good deal of time in Afghanistan. You've lived there and worked there. So just on a personal note, how has this week been for you and taking the news?
It's been heavy. I think one of the challenges that I think many veterans of the Afghanistan experience is one of conflict. There's that on the one hand a feeling that you'd like your work to have been acknowledged and that you made a difference for many people and communities, but also for the service of our country. But in the recent days here of the fall of Kabul and much of the country to the Taliban, I think it makes many question the time and the 20 years of investment into the country.
Congresswoman Slotkin has said now is the time to focus on life and limb, and we'll get to the analysis and the finger pointing later. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because there are still folks there who helped out the United States over the 20 years war. What might happen to them on the ground?
Unfortunately, there are over 18,000 special immigrant visa applicants. These are folks that supported the American mission, the international forces, and took jobs to support the goals and the mission of the United States and its efforts with significant risk, knowing that if the Taliban were to take over the country, they would be targeted, there would be retributions, and unfortunately, their families would also be feeling that brute force. So unfortunately, there's been a scramble, as you've seen in recent days here, on trying to get as many of our allies out as possible. Unfortunately, it's become pretty clear that some of that effort has been limited by miscalculation on just how much time folks had to get people out. The recent estimates thought that we had 30, 60 days, and obviously we haven't even reached the September 11th official pullout date, and the president of the country has already fled.
There are reports of folks who are hiding their papers that show that they have helped the Americans. Something that used to be a golden ticket is now something, unfortunately, that they will have to hide if their homes are raided by the Taliban or the like. Let's talk about women as well, because this is a particular group that is going to face dramatic change in that country. There are reports now of women being told they can't leave the house without a male guardian, reports of them being flogged in the streets, of lists of activists, and Taliban having the lists of activists, women activists. What can be done for those women, if anything?
It's going to be very challenging here. And I think, many of the United States and its partners is trying to assess this now. It's, women, of course, but also women advocates, journalists, nonprofit leaders who have been listed and targeted. They're targeted on social media and being mined for information. So certainly one of the key efforts here is to support nonprofits that are also supporting the effort to get folks out. Folks like No One Left Behind, who's been working to support these groups here, not just on special immigrant visas, but also on what's called the P2 designation for refugees, so the second level of refugee status here, and really just trying to advance as much of the bureaucracy possible to get folks out quickly, safely, expediently, and working on the paperwork after the fact. That's going to require the United States, as President Biden announced today, to send in troops to secure the airfield so they can get both commercial and military flights out. And hopefully many of the women who are going to be significantly affected, and I mean, in ways that are quite inhumane, including, forced marriages and likely worse. So time is ticking, unfortunately.
Yes, so it seems. Okay, I want to shift then and talk about the geopolitical layout at the moment. What does a Taliban-led Afghanistan look like? What can we expect? Who will they align themselves with?
Unfortunately, that is going to be a significant challenge for the United States here. I think both China and Russia have already commented that they're going to keep their embassies in full place. So very much expect that there will be alignment there. Also look for neighbors like Pakistan to embrace the incoming regime here. And I think it's going to be a significant challenge for the United States, NATO allies, and Western partners. The United Nations recently brought out a statement saying they wanted to see that the incoming government was inclusive and held women to international human rights standards and values. it will be very challenging. The United States will be in a weakened position. And certainly as a Vietnamese American, it certainly makes me think of the efforts with the fall of Saigon in April of '75. I think, we're in a very challenging space from a geopolitical perspective.
And Biden said today that the United States would be able to respond quickly if needed in the future, even without the presence there that we've had for the past 20 years. What confidence do you have in our ability to respond quickly without that type of presence that we've had there?
Well, I mean, the whole effort in going into Afghanistan was twofold, right? The first was to ensure that Afghanistan was not a haven for terrorists that had the ability to attack our homeland.
Right.
And the second piece, right, was to ensure that we could be promoting democratic standards. Unfortunately, it's going to be much tougher to enforce those efforts and those interests. And, President Biden did say that human rights was at the center of his policy. It's going to be very challenging to be able to do that without working with other partners and other back channels to ensure that we can have additional leverage.
Certainly something we'll all be focusing on, in the amount of resources that this administration and future administrations may have to spend on keeping those terrorist threats at bay there. Jeff Lee, thank you so much for spending time with us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up next on the Final Five, we'll have more for you.